Teachers of Reddit, what was the juiciest gossip you've heard from students while in the classroom? A couple of weeks ago one of my second graders was crying, so some of the other kids in the class went over and asked what was wrong. Turns out her parents were getting a divorce because her dad was messing around with 4 other women and one of them is having another baby. Those were her exact words. I don't even want to know what else that poor kid had to overhear. I teach kindergarten. One student a few years back was acting off. Super hyper and behaving in ways she never had. When asked if she had taken her peanut butter at home, code for her ADHD medicine, as it was administered in a spoonful of peanut butter, she told us that her mom sold all of her peanut butter to some guy in their trailer park named Steve. Not juicy. Just silly. Good kid stayed after class to show me his anime drawings. Haha. And started rambling about his family dynamics. He told me that his parents are still very much in love and are often go on dates. Sweet. Then he told me that there's a rule in the house that if the master bedroom door is closed you are to stay far away and never interrupt. Sometimes they'll be in there for hours. Haha. Ha ha ha. By the change in expression on his face I could tell he just figured it out. I posted this before, but it fits better here. I was in the back of the room looking for something in a cabinet. 2 girls were having a conversation. Oblivious I was there. Girl 1, so they like have sex at a party? Girl 2, all the time. It's called swinging. I think I don't know, but I found stuff on my dad's computer. Girl 1, that's so weird. Girl 2, right? I have to go spend next weekend at my grandma's because there's going to be a party at my house. Not a teacher, but I do volunteer for a middle school. Anyway, one of the students, a 6th grader, had sent a video of herself nude to a boy she liked. The boy had brought his phone to school the next day and showed everybody he talked to. He also had sent it to a group chat that had his whole class. The police had to come to the school to investigate. The girl was taken out of school by her parents, and the boy was expelled. My 1st grader once came to school and told me that daddy drank too much last night and mummy made him sleep in the bathtub. Another told me about the pubic hair grooming habits of her mother. I've never gotten horrible gossips from my young students. But parents, be aware. Your family secrets are not secrets if your young kids know. My mom is a teacher. She said her students complained how the math teacher passed gas in front of them. The students laughed, which infuriated the teacher, and she told them if nobody would take responsibility for it she would keep the class after school because it was not her that farted. None of the students took responsibility for the loud noisy smell, so the students missed their buses that day. Oh boy. A girl's mom had been renting out a storage unit and using it to have sex with her daughter's boyfriend. The girl and her BF were only together because the mom suggested it to the boy, so he could hang around her without any questions about it. When it came out, her parents got divorced and her dad died in a drink driving accident a month later trying to cope with it all. Really messed up. Heard this from a teacher. About 10 years there was apparently an orgy on campus during lunch. It was 4 girls 6 guys. They got caught eyeing in the garden shed when the TA, also a student, went to get stuff ready for the next day. Word got around as a rumor at first until people who had walked by during the deed heard what was going. Confirmed it was true. The 2 seniors, both 18, almost got time in prison and almost registered as sex offenders, as 2 of the girls were 9th graders. Story of a friend who is also a teacher. I don't hold a candle to this one. Students were passing notes in class. This is 8th grade, US. After about a month they become comfortable and it started to interfere with class, so it got to point where he confiscated it. The students panicked. And really panicked. Said they apologized and told him to just throw it away. He said he'll decide later and kept it. He did read it. And a group about 8 students, half boys and half girls, would rotate sexual partners for only an LSX because they wanted to keep their virginity. This is their idea. He ended up having a conference with the parents one-on-one and it was a rough rest of the year. The juiciest gossip was always about fellow staff. One of my students, 11th grade, came to school and told me she'd ran into my boss in the weirdest situation that weekend. Turned out, my student was dating and sleeping with another student. That second student lived with his mother, who had recently separated from the father after the mom was caught cheating. The man she was cheating with was my boss, who was still married. My student had run into him as they were both sneaking out of the same house early on Saturday morning. Turned out to all be true. Two girls in the back of my theater classroom would not stop talking. One of them seemed upset, so I asked them to keep it down. It continued, so I told them more firmly to pay attention. The upset girl promptly freaked out. Said, "What the do you want Emmy to do? I'm pregnant." The entire class's mouths dropped and I couldn't think of anything to do but send her to the trauma counselor. Sure enough. Yep, one of my sophomores had a baby the April before she became a high school junior. What the do you want Emmy to do? Not talk about it in the middle of class, I guess. One of my 7th graders told me about how one of the more interesting students in our class took a dump in his hand and hid the incriminating turd in his desk. Not sure if this qualifies as juicy, but I heard this yesterday and have been looking for a place to share this lovely tidbit. I teach kindergarten and they really do share everything that goes on at home. During our morning meeting, one boy shared that his uncle was arrested over the weekend and would be in jail for a long time. I was curious, so I asked what happened and he happily told me that his uncle was making lots of fake money. Another time a student ran up to me and was so excited and the conversation went like this. "Boy. M's. V. My dad is so awesome. He's so talented." Me. "Oh wow. That's great. What is his talent?" Boy. "Well, he can chug a whole bottle of beer without stopping. Sometimes he drinks all 6 beers at night." Me. "Wow. That's awesome. I'm proud of him." My class was the one that let our teacher know that her 37-year-old assistant had slept with a 16-year-old on prom night. My calculus teacher told us about his friend at the school he worked at before mine who got fired for having sex with a student in a dugout in broad daylight. They were found by the baseball coach. He's out. The student mentioned that his father went into a classroom with a fellow elementary school teacher after school hours, locked the door, and the student then wandered the halls. Student was later caught bragging to other students that his dad has sex with the teacher. Student A was talking to student B about her SXT Snapchat she received. They both start giggling and talking about the person who sent the SXT. It was the newly appointed assistant principal of the high school. Before taking the new position of AP, he was the girls' volleyball coach, boys' baseball coach, and the advisor counselor for the at-risk youth at the high school. Also turns out he was selling weed to the baseball team. Oh. And he had sexual relations with student A when she was 16 years old. I made the CPS report and told the principal. He was fired immediately and student A ended up cooperating with police and pressing charges. The students told me that MRS. Spanish teacher's baby was MR. Spanish teachers. They went on to tell me that the two teachers had been caught doing the nasty in the library by a student. The saddest part was that they were both married to other people. And MR. Spanish teacher and his wife had decided that they weren't going to have children. His wife wanted kids. He didn't. The baby had his last name. So any kid who didn't already know knew as soon as the baby was born. Don't you just hate it when the baby comes out and it doesn't have your last name? In one school I had heard that 3 students, all minors, shot a SX tape and leaked it. Another group of students gang up had a special needs student at a school event. In another school I heard that 2 kids were called into the office and suspended because they'd shot at each other over the weekend. The saddest was 2 girls having a conversation about how one girl's mother had remained dating a man who'd kidnapped and raped her, the mother, at gunpoint. I didn't work in a good school. Record scratch. What? One principal told me that she was dosed LSD by a student, putting 1 or 2 hits in her coffee, and just went about her day as normal. Attended meetings, etc. She was familiar with the experience and didn't need to go home. She waited for another day to discipline him and let him know the legal implications of what he had done and how serious the police would find it if she reported. That principal is I'm gangster lol. I'm a homeroom kindergarten teacher in Beijing. Many of my students are 5 or 6 years old and are mostly all foreign children. One of my students has no English at all and one day she keeps saying pull my hair. I ask her in Chinese why does she keep saying pull my hair. She told me she heard it the night before at home. Straight away I think oh my god and then release that her mother doesn't speak English. Sometimes their maids and au pairs come to collect the children. On this specific day I wanted to talk to her father regarding something else and lo and behold doesn't a 20-year-old au pair with perfect English collect the poor child. Closest thing to getting juicy gossip other than trying to figure out which child ate which Claydon. I teach in an elementary school. We share a PE teacher with a neighboring elementary school. This teacher told me about a group of 5th and 6th graders that all went to a nearby park and had a contest to see who was the best at giving oral. These are kids ranging from 10-12 years old. I would not want to be the administrator that had to make those phone calls home. At my school, there was some whole Ting scandal. 2 kids got into a fight. Kids watching posted it on their Snapchat story. The school's police officer found out and confiscated the phones that were recording it. On those phones, they found a dick pic. Student A, male, sent this to student B, female, and B screenshotted it. After A and B broke up, B sent this to student C, male, who posted this on their story for about 10 minutes before taking this down. Keep in mind all these kids are in 7th and 8th grade. Then, when confiscating all A, B, and C's phones, they found screenshots of student D, female, 9th grader, flashing her tits on a Instagram live stream. Then they confiscated her phone, finding a dick pic or student E. The end. 7th grade girl apparently had 2 dicks in her mouth in one of the back stairwells this year and like 3 kids apparently saw it. One kid showed me a video of 2 female students making out in the bathroom. Not technically gossip, but I figure it fits. Then there's the rather infamous abandoned house down the street where the middle school gangbangs take girls to get high and then tag team them. About 2 other teachers who always hooked up in the teacher bathroom. It was 2 foreign teachers we had, so to the student it was extra exotic. I taught 3rd grade and had to take a mix of students with me to dismissal. A former student, let's call him B, was standing near me at dismissal. As his vehicle approaches, one of my current students, let's call him J, waves at the woman driving. I let B in the car and go back to my post. J tells me B's mom is really nice and I ask if they are neighbors or if he plays with B after school. He shakes his head and says, my dad and his mom are friends. They're going to have a baby. I stand there confused, knowing that Jay's parents are married and had just met with me for a conference. He continues, well, we think they are having a baby, but my mom says the lady has a lot of friends and it might be Ease, a student from another class. Dad, I hope it's ours. I want a sister. I work with preschoolers, so the juiciest ones are. He's not invited to my birthday party. My mom has a baby in her belly. This girl in the preschool class I teach always tells me little random stories about her mom getting pulled over for speeding, or spending time drinking with her friends. Well, last week we were on our way to a field trip and she saw a billboard for a beer company. I'm not sure what company, but it had a beer can on it and she said very loudly, I love beer. And I said, what? And she repeated herself. So I said, stop, you're being silly. She said, no, my daddy used to give it to me all the time. He stopped, but sometimes he gives me sips of it, and once he gave my sister a whole can. And I said, oh Sally, you mean root beer? She said no, the beer only grown-ups drink. In a city substitute for a while. A girl casually dropped that her mom was getting out of prison next week. And her dad was dead. I was the student. I told my first grade teacher that one of my mom's friends played with a snake for work. At first my teacher thought it was a euphemism I'd heard and asked me privately after class what I meant. I happily explained that she was a titty dancer, a phrase my mom used, who used a boa constrictor in her dance, and that I got to meet the snake backstage. I could tell she was obviously concerned, and somehow in my brain I thought telling her, but don't worry, she's very careful not to get her titties bit because the snake likes to eat mice. The parent-teacher conference ended up in a yelling match and a visit from CPS. That our assistant principal was sleeping with the security guard. Security guard's GF had just had a kid. And everyone found out about it. BC the principal had a very public argument. W the security guard and the gym teacher he was also sleeping with. I overheard 6th grade girls telling each other which teachers they've had sex dreams about. I walked away not wanting to hear more or if I was named. The year after the events of this story occurred, I found out why a lot of my 8th grade boys were calling their friend Nutlips. Seems good Ole Nutlips was sexually active and took all his sexual advice from PRN. IDK what PRN he was watching exactly, but after finishing he had his girlfriend snowball his spunk back into his own mouth. He bragged to all of his friends about this and of course they made fun of him mercilessly. One of my male students left his phone unattended and unlocked around his girlfriend, and she picked it up and started searching through it. What she found was his very male best friend texting and sending him nudes and talking about how much he loved him, and the BF was texting back and being equally enthusiastic about being in love with him and the two of them being together out in the open once they finished school and were in university. She proceeded to screenshot and send all those texts, SXTS and nudes to her boyfriend's parents before replacing his phone so he wouldn't know. BF's parents were very conservative. This kid went home to be blindsided thanks to her. And apparently he had to basically flee the house because he was afraid of his father getting physical with him. To follow up, her boyfriend's best friend boyfriend came to school the next day and lost his on her. She called him disgusting and some other homophobic. And he got 3 or 4 good punches in before he was restrained, screaming his head off the whole time. Not a teacher, but I heard from one of the seniors that a freshman girl at my school got gangbanged, recorded it, and posted it to the internet. I presume she moved. I was a sophomore, and it was the beginning of the year in drama. This girl got stoned for the first time during lunch and came back way too high. Our drama teacher was cool and pulled her aside and let her hang out in another separate room to sober up. She was having a hard time complying and just sort of laughing uncontrollably while flopping around. The other freshman students from her middle school told me that on the last day of 8th grade she told a group of boys to follow her in the bathroom. She then proceeded to tell all the guys that her dad got a new job in a different state and she would not see them next year. This was then allegedly followed by her taking a hot dog out of her lunch bag, dropping her pants, inserting it inside herself, then pulling it out and eating it. Teenagers are fun. A guy walked one of my students to class right after having broken up with her. He was walking with his arm around her trying to comfort her, but she was completely hunched over and seemed to be trying not to cry. Once at the door he said we can still hang out and she just nodded and choked down a sob. He then pulled her into the most awkward hug I have ever seen and jogged off calling bye over his shoulder. The girl follows her classmates into the classroom and sits at her desk. Immediately starts bawling her eyes out. I give her a packet of tissues. Let her know she could leave the room to go to the bathroom whenever she wanted and did not call on her all class. Not a teacher. But in high school there was a kid who had some other kid's mom at a house party. The ed up part was she was blasted and he apparently took advantage of her. It was pretty dark and weird. All I know that came of it was the kid never came back to school after that. A kid told me her dad cheated on her mom and he has a girlfriend and is a drunk. She was 7. I kept trying to change the subject. A few months later her mom went on a cruise and they gave her mom shots and got her drunk. Be careful what you talk about in front of kids. This kid knew worried about too much. I worked in a Catholic school and my homeroom class had to do morning prayers. We did intentions, where students could offer up things they particularly wanted us to pray for. One student would routinely say things like, "For my family because we don't have a lot of money right now." Not exactly super juicy, but not something her parents probably wanted aired out in front of their kids' friends, who were also largely their friends' kids and their kids' teachers. Ellie kissed Harry on the playground. But Katie, Ellie's best friend, likes Harry. This story came from a neighbor. Primary school kid comes to school excited because his family is going to get a pet hedgehog. Teacher asks us if it's an unusual pet. "Are you sure you aren't getting a cat or a dog?" Kid replies, "No. I heard mommy tell daddy that if he did the dishes she would give him a hedgehog." Currently a HS student and 2 kids were busted for having sex in the staff bathroom during lunch. Why would you ever pick the staff bathroom though? Why? Well, there was the teacher who yelled at a kid for using a rainbow pen because it was gay and made the kids read an article about how Obama was the Antichrist. And then there was the other teacher who grabbed one kid so hard she left bruises and slapped another across the face moments apart. I didn't believe the kids at first, but it all ended up being true. Also, both teachers kept their jobs. Full stop. Full stop. A kid once informed me in the class that her parents were werewolves. I, understandably puzzled, asked her what made her think that. I found the handcuffs they use. In this movie, the werewolves locked themselves up during the full moon so they wouldn't eat anybody. And theirs are the same kind. Isn't that interesting? Not quite the traits I had in mind. But I can tell you might be worried about that. So I'm going to tell you all about a scientist who lived long ago, named Gregor Mendel, and how he used peas in his garden to learn about genetic inheritance. High school quarterback slept with his girlfriend's mom. Girlfriend, cheerleader I think, found out and slept with his dad to get back at him. Before I was a teacher however, I worked in a paint store. One of our customers was the local Catholic high school. Somehow the 50-something-year-old Cajun custodian started a relationship with one of the cheerleaders. Parents found out and were red. He left, got fired. But when she graduated they hooked up and moved to Louisiana. One of my second graders told me that her aunt was pregnant. When I asked her if she was excited, she said, "Yeah. But my uncle is mad." I asked why. He says my auntie has to choose him or her boyfriend, and if she chose her boyfriend, she had to move out. She chose the boyfriend. Oops. Not a teacher, but a weird story that might fit. 9th grade swimming obviously required changing in the locker room with your class. Some of the guys thought it was funny to run around the room naked at the time. One of them was a rather large kid who thought it was funny to swing around and show his tiny wiener to everyone. Like every day, I'd just change and get the out before any weird happened. One day one of the kids took a pic of him and his little dick and sent it around to the whole school. The kid who took the pic ended up getting expelled and had to register as a sex offender. Ate his life up by taking a dick pic of some small-dicked kid. Not a teacher. But back in middle school my friend told me there was a confirmed rumor that there was a sex tape between 9th 7th graders, and there was a second rumor going around about a possible pregnancy. Thankfully not. But all of that. I work in res life at a residential high school. It was my first month at work and I was doing rounds in the dormitories when I hear I think I'm pregnant. I just kept walking. I was brand new and had no idea how to relate to teenage girls at the time. I told the RA on the hall what I heard and she checked on the girls later. Luckily, there were no teenage pregnancies that year. Little girl told me that she's not allowed to read a book her mother's reading. Apparently she read 50 Shades of Grey. The girl said that nobody is allowed to disturb her mother while she's reading the book in her bedroom. I have a tattoo in my ankle. And a girl, 6, told me as we were entering the classroom, "I really like your tattoo. Thank you. Go to your seat." Yeah, my mom has my father's face in her butt. She used the word nalga in Spanish, which is a strong and unusual word for a 6-year-old to use. Poker face. Oh nice, yeah. He died after being shot by the police. They were chasing him and his friends cause they had a lot of drugs in their cars. Nalga is about the mildest way to say butt that there is besides pomps.